Alright, welcome back to the channel, my friends. Warhammer Man back in the studio, and today we're taking a look at what you need to know to start collecting Aeldari. If you're new to the channel, make sure to like and subscribe for Warhammer 40,000, Kill Team, Necromunda, Age of Sigmar, and warcry content as well. So obviously with the new Aeldari Codex coming out, lots of new players will be joining the fray, so let's take a look at what we need to start collecting. Also, if you've been around for a while or you recognize this terrain from anywhere, please let me know where that terrain is from. I've not seen it before, but we've seen it pop up in the new codex. We've heard nothing about it so far. No one has discussed it, talked about it. We have no rumors of its availability. I think there's potential that this is just an actual Wraith Knight just posed into a statue, but still not familiar with these anywhere. And I'm very curious about these walkways and everything, if that's something that we will see coming. So Aeldari, the arrogance is matched only by their firepower. The Aeldari are a proud race, facing their inevitable doom with tenacity and determination. They are like a sudden storm in battle, striking quickly and furiously, and retreating before their enemies can begin to respond. They deploy a combination of powerful psychers who read the skeins of fate to predict the outcome of combat. Soldiers who have walked martial paths that grant them skills beyond human ken. Hardly walking constructs, piloted by the souls of long-dead warriors, and lightning-fast anti-gravity bikes and tanks. With a wide variety of iconic units, the Aeldari have a feast of options for new players. It can be a little hard to know where to start, so we've prepared a comprehensive guide to all the things Aeldari for prospective fans to get stuck in. This covers everything, including their history, their heroes, where to start with collecting an army, how to paint your models, and much more. So here we have a couple of tabs here for lore, playstyle, codex, subfactions, key units, and painting. So starting here with the lore. The Aeldari are an ancient and once proud race whose hubris cursed their demise. As their civilization reached new heights of technology and culture, they came to dominate the galaxy around them. They began to seek stranger and darker pleasures. A psychic species, their activities began to leave a shadow in the immaterial realm of the warp, and eventually they reached such collective heights of indulgence that their revels birthed Slaanesh, a new chaos god of excess. The resulting psychic shockwave reverberated through the Aeldari space, killing untold millions and leaving their empire in ruins. So if you're not familiar with the lore, the birth of Slaanesh essentially came through Eldar and like it said, through their excess and pleasure and enjoyment and everything, and wiped out a huge portion of the race. So here in the pictures, we see an autarch, one of the champions. We see the avatar in the background, the bloody-handed god. A couple of Dark Reapers, see some Grav Tanks, a Warlock, some Guardians, see some Striking Scorpions, Howling Banshees. Looks like a Wraith Lord back here as well. Pretty cool piece of art. Definitely very cool. They have a ton of awesome lore, and also the models are looking great. Old and new. A few forward-thinking groups of Aeldari managed to avoid the fall, building vast spaceships called craft worlds and escaping their increasingly debased kin. Known as the Asuryani, these refugees have lived a precious existence in the millennia since the coming of Slaanesh, preserving a more austere way of life and guarding against another calamity. So essentially the Eldar built like these giant spaceships that were essentially like worlds, some of them like asteroids with engines, other ones like full-on like futuristic type spaceships. And they basically just, left and became like their own civilizations to kind of like save the race. Other groups of Aeldari cling to existence, including the Harlequins, who travel the webway, an ancient network of safe tunnels through the warp, acting as diplomats, performers, and mercenaries, and the Ynnari, who worship the half-reborn god of death, as a means to finally thwart Slaanesh and recapture the Aeldari souls it ate during the fall. So obviously the Harlequins are basically, like the entertainers, kind of like traveling, sort of like gypsies a little bit. the diplomats, mercenaries, etc. And they can obviously do their own thing, or they will work with Aeldari or Ynnari. And then the Ynnari themselves are sort of like a blend between Eldar and Dark Eldar. You know, not necessarily evil, not necessarily good, but kind of treading the gray area in between. And here we see some Harlequin art. Well, not even just Harlequins. So we see a bunch of Dire Avengers looking like they're having a tough time over here. Some Death Guard, some Plague Bearer, Nurgle Demons, and then of course we see some various Harlequins. Looks like maybe a Troop Master right here, a Solitaire, little jet bike action in the background. Again, nice piece of art right here. And you know, these are obviously Eldar looking structures, very like sleek. So maybe this is taking place in an on an Eldar craft world or a home world. There's a rich vein of fiction to explain the Aeldari in more detail. Gav Thorpe's landmark omnibus, Path of the Eldar, covers many aspects of the Aeldari, while Ghost Warrior explores the new formed Ynnari faction, and the Mask of Vile focuses on the Harlequins. So again, just a couple of books talking about a little bit of the lore there and everything. Next we have a little bit on playstyle. On the tabletop, the Aeldari are forced to be reckoned with. They command incredible psychic powers, thanks to all their powers, Farseers, and the conclave of warlocks that support them. These potent heroes work together to devastate their opponents while buffing their army's core of swift infantry. Again, here we see a nice looking piece of art. This one has shown up in quite a few places, showcasing a lot of the new units. So we see a couple of the different Guardian squads, both these made from the single kit that is available now. And then here we see Moggan Ra, the Phoenix Lord of the Dark Reapers. Here we see a squad of Dark Reapers, one of the new Autarch models, of course the beautiful Avatar of Kane. Here we see a Falcon Grav Tank. Actually, you know what? I don't think that's a Falcon. That's a Wave Serpent. I'm sorry, that's like the transport Grav Tank. Here we see some of the new Skyrunners, the snipers on jet bike, 2 crew per bike. Here we see the Eldar Rangers right here. We would like the sniper troops. And then we see one of their flyers here. This kit can build either of the available flyers to them, the Hemlock Wraith Fighter. And then in the background we can kind of see a fire prism, and it looks like a Falcon right here. Here we see the other version of the plane, a couple of the new Shining Spear models that aren't quite out yet, and then of course the sort of like knight of the Aeldari, which is the Wraith Knight, but basically the size of like an Imperial Knight, very large. Obviously you can see how far away he is and still how beefy. This is a great looking picture showcasing the range of new stuff. Speed and precision are the name of the game, as most Aeldari units, from the aspect warriors to fire prisms, can move fast and hit hard, but can't weather much return fire. Aeldari armies are highly mobile, a specialized scalpel that can bring down a much more powerful opponent by careful application of incredible force. There are many elite units which excel at one battlefield role, rewarding an observant commander who can be flexible on the fly. Harlequins must be used with even more precision. They're faster and deadlier, yet as they caper across the war zone, but their only real armor is surprise. So essentially, you know, talking about how Aeldari are basically a glass cannon. They hit very hard, they're very specialized, but they're not very durable. And then units like Harlequins have a lot of cool special abilities, and again are very potent, but at the same time they lack like the traditional armor saves of their companions, but they do have like invulnerable saves and special rules to help protect them. But if caught exposed, they'll easily fall to volume of fire. So for the Codex. The Codex is most crucial thing for an Aeldari player to own, and the latest edition is most comprehensive, over a 200-page tome covering every aspect of the faction. You'll find pages of history and background, displays of gorgeous miniatures and painting tips, and all the rules you need. So we know the new Codex is for pre-order now and coming out very soon. We have seen many reviews and discussions about it. There are essentially 3 armies contained within this book: your traditional Aeldari, your Harlequins, and then your Ynnari. And then you can do a blend of some various levels or stages of these armies, or exclusive one or the other. Tons and tons of stratagems, new data sheets, all kinds of cool special rules, and literally unlimited combinations to build an army. It contains all the data sheets for dozens of heroes, vehicle units and monsters, and more, as well as specialized war gear, stratagems, psychic powers, and other tricks you need to get the most out of the Aeldari. There are special rules for many of the most famous craft worlds and Harlequin troops, each of which has their own strengths and quirks. On top of that, you'll get all you need to run more diverse armies than ever before. With combined hosts of Asuryani, Ynnari, and Harlequins, the Aeldari have always been a multifaceted race, but now they're bringing their full strength to bear, and you can demonstrate that on the tabletop like never before. And also, obviously, you can create your own custom craft world, similar to what you can do with Space Marines. You can pick, one or two key traits or special abilities that you want your army to interact with, and then you can combine those traits to essentially create a custom craft world. You can do your own paint scheme, have your own special rules, and then obviously build your army accordingly to maximize fun or your killiness. So here we see some previews of a couple of the data sheets and just kind of like the overall layout of the Codex. So it says the power right on each one of the data sheets, and then all the points are listed in a separate area. So if you want to build your army the simple way and you're using power, you can obviously do that very easily. If you want to use points, you'll have to go reference the back part, and then that will show you specific war gear. As where normally if you use the power, the war gear is all included. You basically can just put whatever you want out of their choices on them for no additional cost. As where with points, you need to be a little more nitpicky to make sure that it stays a little more balanced. Then there's the Crusade section, which is a cool way to grow and develop your army as you play games. As units earn experience and gain new skills and armaments, tell epic stories of conflict that triumph as they blood a force of fresh troops and mold them into hardened veterans armed with legendary relics of war. There's plenty of guidance on how to paint your chosen subfaction, as well as fascinating lore on their histories, victories, and defeats. So what it's talking about there, the Crusade section, is basically like campaign rules. If you have a buddy or a couple of buddies or a group of people locally that all want to play a Crusade, it's a great way to build up an army together, or start with an army and essentially build up the troops within that army to gain like special abilities and rules, essentially allowing you to have like veterans of multiple battles. It's a little more flavorful and a little less balanced, and not quite as popular as your typical like competitive rules. So for subfactions, you can create an army. You begin by choosing one of the three main subfactions in the Aeldari books: Asuryani, Ynnari, or Harlequins. So for the Asuryani, this is like what you would refer to as your pure Eldar faction or Aeldari faction. These are the mainstays of the Aeldari. There are many craft worlds scattered across the galaxy, some of them very famous, such as Helitok, Ayenden, Saimhan, Baeltan, or Ulthwé, though there are many other smaller and more mysterious names. So this is like the exclusive Eldar or Aeldari faction. You don't get to add any Harlequins, you don't get to add any Drukhari or Dark Eldar in with it. It's strictly the Asuryani. Next we have the Harlequins. Capricious and unscrutable, the Harlequins know that the galaxy's a stage, and they are merely players. Troops can join Asuryani, Ynnari, or even Drukhari armies, but they can also fight on their own as a fully fledged faction. They act out the tragedy and comedy of the Aeldari story, even on the battlefield, and reflect the light and dark aspects of the Aeldari at war. So the Harlequins are sort of like birthed out of the fall of the Aeldari, and like, the Slaanesh kind of like wiping out part of their race. So that is sort of like their kind of theme. So they're the little like blend between light and dark, and sort of like the, tribulations that fell upon the race. So here we see, obviously you can build a strictly Harlequin army, or you can do a combination of them with the other armies as well. And then next we have Ynnari. The Ynnari have chosen to join the worship of Ynid, the nascent Aeldari god of the dead. Although not yet fully born, paradoxically offers the Aeldari their greatest hope of salvation and the defeat of Slaanesh. The Ynnari pull Aeldari together from all walks of life, including the mysterious Exodites, the mercenary corsairs, and even the dark-tempted Drukhari. So the Ynnari are basically a combination of everything. They are not only the regular Eldar or Aeldari, but also the Dark Eldar or Drukhari. And then they also have mercenaries from the Corsairs, which are basically like space pirates. And then also the Exodites, which are essentially sort of like Eldar warriors riding on like dinosaurs. So very cool little twist there. And that's your basic like 3 ways that you can kind of build your army or build your forces or lore, etc. So for key units, we'll take a look at some of those. While different Aeldari armies might choose to focus on specific aspects of the combat arts, they have a host of iconic units at their disposal. These are likely to be some of your mainstays. So here we see the Farseer, and this is a relatively new model, but not from the brand new releases. It is rare to see an Aeldari warhost without a Farseer present to guide it. These immensely powerful psykers lead the armies of the craft worlds, scrying the tendrils of the future with the help of arcane ruins and psychic mastery. They maximize the natural skills and power of the Aeldari, and they hinder their foes with stupefying magics and eldritch storms. So for the Farseers, they are very powerful psykers. They can buff your troops either offensively or defensively. They have offensive powers that they can do damage with, but overall, they are typically the leaders of your army. You will almost always find at least one Farseer in any composed list, and they are like an exponential modifier. So anytime you have any unit and then you add a Farseer to help them, they're going to get exponentially more powerful. So they are great choices and almost always included. So for the Guardian host next, this is the new Guardian kit, and it can be assembled either with the shuriken catapults that we see here and the gun platform sort of like floating around next to it, or you can also have a close combat unit of them which have pistols and swords, and then they have a like shield turret that helps to protect them while they get into battle. Every Aeldari is ready to lay down their life to fight for the survival of their people, picking up a shuriken cannon to fight as guardian defenders. Shuriken catapult is what they mean there. Or close combat weapons as storm guardians. These are versatile warriors, gifted with the natural grace and speed of the Aeldari, and aided by the support platforms that carry heavy weapons or defensive shields into battle. So here we see the brand new kit, 10 models plus the floating turret to help them. Very nice set, male and female models as well. Very cool models, and these are just regular people from the Aeldari, and they basically pick up arms and defend or fight in battle. But obviously, because these are space elves, they are much more capable than just a typical like human would be. So they have nice stats and armor to reflect that, but they are much less specialized than the other units, such as the aspect warriors. So here we see some Howling Banshees. As a means of claiming their tempestuous emotions and keeping their ancient enemy at bay, most Aeldari devote themselves to specialized paths, on which they hone one skill, sometimes to the point of obsession. Aspect warriors are the Aeldari who walk the martial paths. Each aspect shrine is built around the teachings of a Phoenix Lord, legendary figures inspired by the various ways the Aeldari god of war, Kane, engaged in battle. Among the scariest of the aspect warriors are the Howling Banshees. These elite combatants use quicksilver swordplay and terrifying banshee masks, arcane wargear that amplifies their battle cries into a psychosonic weapon, incapacitating anyone within earshot. So the aspect warriors are all specialized units. Each of the various aspects is basically a path that a devoted combatant takes, and then they specialize in various ways of combat, but they are 100% warriors, not just regular people fighting. So we have here the Howling Banshees. They are almost purely combat. They have like a banshee mask that screams and essentially like paralyzes their opponents, has some cool gameplay abilities, and they all carry swords and pistols. They are very strong offensively, but again, none of the Eldar are particularly durable. So we have the Howling Banshees. Then we have the Striking Scorpions, which are essentially like sort of like a little more stealthy, forward acting units, but also directed towards combat. They have little scorpion mandiblasters, which can do extra mortal wounds in game terms. Again, very cool. And then we have our Swooping Hawks. They are basically like flying unit of troops, kind of jump in, hit hard. They're not particularly great at combat. They're more just sort of like pop up, shoot, and then fly away without being hurt. And then after that we have the Dark Reapers. They are a little less mobile and carry like big heavy weapons. They have sort of a grim skeletal aspect to them and are sort of like the defensive, hard-hitting ranged units of the Eldar aspect warriors. And then we have the Fire Dragons. They are like brightly colored, more durable, but they are up in your face. They have to be very close for their weapons, but they use like fusion weapons that are extremely potent for destroying heavily armored targets or killing characters like in a single shot. And then we have also the Warp Spiders. They are basically a teleporting unit that has primarily shooting, but they have like a flame style weapon that essentially shoots out a bunch of tiny little monofilament wires, kind of like gets inside of your armor, goes inside the cracks, and then like whips around and kind of liquefies you from the inside. And then they actually like teleport away as not to be hit back. So, and then finally we have the Dire Avengers. They are much more versatile, well-rounded. They have some cool abilities, a little more durable, the ability to basically, they're sort of like a buffed up version of the Guardians, but a little more potent at shooting. They have some nice special abilities, but are overall essentially just like a specialized regular troop for them. And then each of the aspect warriors has a Phoenix Lord, who is essentially like a legend that everybody follows after along their path. He's sort of like the sensei of them all, and lives on eternally. As one falls, another takes its place as basically like the leader of that aspect. So they are legendary warriors that have been around forever, and then even when they do die, the legend continues on as someone steps up to take their place. So very cool lore, and obviously some key parts of any army. Next we have the Avatar of Kane. This model is not yet released, but is absolutely phenomenal. Great detail. He's basically like a molten lava god incarnate. Aeldari warriors emulate the various warlike aspects of Kane in battle. But each craft world holds a terrible secret in its heart. There is a chamber which contains an Avatar of Kane, a molten metal statue which contains a still living shard of the defeated warrior god. In times of war, this shard is awakened and set aflame. This colossus of battle bestrides the battlefield, a living god that sighs down its foes by the score. So this dude basically just sits dormant on a throne, and then eventually when the time is right, the little shard of their fallen god animates this molten lava beast, and he comes to battle. And he is a potent warrior, as we know from his data cards, and a massive, massive model. He's very, very large and very, very awesome. Next we have the Wraith Lord. So again, these are large size, essentially like dreadnoughts of the Aeldari. The Aeldari are a long-lived race, but in the aftermath of the fall, they faced a slow demise and a horrifying afterlife. For Slaanesh has staked its claim on each Aeldari soul in death. In response, the Asuryani bound themselves to soul stones, which capture their souls at their deaths to prevent Slaanesh from taking them. In times of great need, these soul stones are embedded in the wraithbone constructs, so that the dead can bolster the armies of the living. There are many such constructs, including the mighty Wraith Lord and the towering Wraith Knight and beyond. There's also Wraith Guard as well, which are like more normal-sized dudes. They're all super strong. They are basically like machines that are powered by the soulstone spirits of the dead. So in order to protect the souls of the Eldar when they die from the Chaos God, they are essentially locked inside of like small gems, and then they're stored there so that they're not consumed by Slaanesh. And then in this case, they will take those stones and they will put them inside the constructs, and it will allow the soul to power the construct. But of course, if the soul stones are destroyed, the soul will be forever consumed by Slaanesh. So next we have the Fire Prisms. These are some hard-hitting tanks with the massive laser right here. Even Aeldari engines of war are swift and agile, including tanks like the Fire Prism, which uses an intricate crystalline matrix to focus energy into their destructive pinpoint spears of light that can pierce the most formidable armor of deadly blast that can obliterate hordes of armored infantry. So these have two different profiles for their main gun, one really hard-hitting single profile, or one that is designed to take out like medium infantry or light infantry, you know, a bunch of models, or they can channel their energy together, multiple of them, and have a single, like basically tank channel all the energy and then fire extremely potently using like some stratagems and tactics. So very cool models and cool little way to get some extra punch if you need it. Next we have the Harlequins. Some Aeldari choose to relinquish their shackles of craft worlds, finding themselves drawn to the whimsical ways of the Harlequins. Following of Sigurach, the Aeldari god of deception, art, and trickery, Harlequins are warrior artists, each obfuscating step in the battle part of deadly dance. So the Harlequin troop, which is what this is basically just a bunch of these dudes. They serve this laughing god, who is essentially like, you know, a god of art, deception, trickery, kind of war, and they're more of like performers, but they are extremely potent in combat. They have many abilities and things that allow them to move around the battlefield freely, sort of like jumping and moving through terrain as if it wasn't there. They hit extremely hard, but again are very delicate to mass amounts of fire. So painting is next. Your Warhammer army is your chance to create a work of art, and the Aeldari are perfect candidates for a tour de force of painting. The 5 primary craft worlds are represented by iconic color schemes such as the green and white thorn motif of Bael'tan to the formed black and bone of Ulthwé, a craft world that sits on the precipice of the Eye of Terror. So here we see the Iyanden paint scheme. It's yellow with the blue helmets and then darker colored guns. Here we see Ulthwé, the black armor with the white helmets and, you know, bone. And then obviously we got a cool little sword going on there. This is Alteok, or so hard to say, but we see the blue armor with the yellow helmet here. And then we see Bael'tan. This is a little more of a basic paint job, but it's the white armor with a lot of green. And then you'll often see like intricate thorn patterns throughout like the vehicles and constructs. And then we have Samhan. They're a little more focused on like speed and jet bikes and stuff like that. But we see like the red armor with white helmets. And then just to kind of touch on the other ones as well. So these ones do a little bit more with like the Wraith constructs. They primarily have a lot of those constructs. These ones, the Ulthwé, have a lot of psychers and focus more on like the psychic aspect of the army. And then we use like basically like a lot of rangers and a lot more like stealth tactics with this one. And then the Bael'tan have a lot of, typically in the lore and everything, have a lot more like aspect warriors. So each one kind of has their own little specialty, not just a color scheme. So the Ynnari prefer a regal blood red and black livery, and the Harlequins present some of the most fabulous canvases in the Warhammer 40,000, both for patterning and freehand. No matter how you prefer to paint, Warhammer has a whole set of guides to specific color schemes, as well as general advice and instructions on all sorts of techniques, so that you can learn to paint your miniatures into battle ready or parade ready standard. Check out the Citadel color site for a list of relevant guides. So there's a bunch of different how to paint, you know, your basic style for each of them. For those who want to up their painting game to the top levels, there are a lot of cool specific videos on Warhammer Plus, the expert, or YouTube obviously. The expert painters on Citadel Color Masterclass show you how to paint things like the crystalline power blades welded by Farseers and autarchs, the glossy soulstones that our Asuryani wear, or the textured leather preferred by the Rangers. And it's no secret to you that you can almost always find as good, if not better, content on YouTube. If you don't have a Warhammer Plus, don't feel left out. So here we see some Eldar battling some Gene Stiller cults. Very cool. Nice looking piece of art. I like the color there. There's plenty more to learn about the ancient race of the Aeldari beyond this. Get started with a copy of Codex Aeldari, and you can help a doomed civilization fight against the seemingly inevitable fate. So with a 200-page codex, tons and tons of ways to build your army, tons and tons of color schemes and craft worlds available to you. Looks like this is going to be absolutely loaded with cool stories, lore, and tons of rules with infinite options. So if you were considering to start an Aeldari, Ynnari, or Harlequin army, hopefully this video has helped you, kind of running through some of the various ways, some of the possible paint schemes and composition that you may see fitting. If you did like the video today, make sure you like and subscribe for Warhammer 40,000, Kill Team, Necromunda, Age of Sigmar, and Warcry content as well. I also do everything from D&D, pretty much anything tabletop game related. I do all kinds of painting tutorials, modeling and conversion tutorials, as well as magnetization, lighting, reaction, reviews, and unboxing. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. If you enjoyed the video today, please let me know as well. Or again, if you have questions or anything like that. This was my first army getting into the game over 20-something years ago, and I do love the Eldar, as they were called back then. The models have come such a long way, and if you're interested, you can join along with me, as I will be building a new army from scratch, as I no longer have my childhood army, but have been waiting for the opportunity to start again. So Codex will be out shortly. I will do a review, walk through that, and then sort of discuss some of the options I'm looking at. And then you guys can join along with me as I do various videos on building, painting, customizing, and army composition. So that's it for today. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Warhammer Man Studios, I'm Warhammer Man, and I'm out of here.